Hi, I'm Bronwyn Clyde.
Hi, I'm Tom Wren.
Hi, I'm Jenny Williams.
Hi, this is Holly Evans.
Hi, this is Bruce McAvaney, and you're listening to Hooked on Sport.
Hi there, everyone. Thanks for your company once again on Hooked on Sport. This is episode 3. We're going to make a bit of a pivot today, and we're going to turn our attention to what's been happening over in Paris, France across the last couple of months. The Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games. And I in particular want to share with you my 5 favourite stories, if you like. There's obviously been some amazing achievements across both the Olympics and Paralympics from our South Australians, but I want to share with you my personal top 5. Now, I'm going to leave a couple out that are probably pretty obvious. Kyle Chalmers, I'm leaving out. Everyone knows about King Kyle and what he has done in the pool across the last 3 Olympic Games. Gold, silver, silver in the 100 free. I'm going to leave out the men's team pursuit. They were incredible. They rode a world record in one of their heats and then, of course, took out the gold medal in the final. That was just amazing. Jess Stenson, I'm just such a fan of Jess Stenson and what she did. Of course, only last weekend she was running second to Izzy Bat-Doyle in the City Bay. But that 13th in the marathon, it was so inspiring to see her hit the front at the halfway point. Unbelievable. But I'm leaving Jess out of my little list here. And then the other one I'm going to leave out is temporary South Australian, if you like, Meg Harris, who, of course, moved down here from Queensland for a couple of years and did settle back in Queensland just before the Olympic Games. She swam a silver medal in the 50-metre freestyle, which was just incredible. And we love Meg, but I have decided to leave her out for a couple of reasons. One is I guess she's a little bit too obvious, and I do like the hidden stories, and also the fact that she has moved back to Queensland, and I really want to keep this little podcast as South Australian as it possibly can be. So there you are. There's a couple I've left out, but let's get into it. My top 5 in SA's best from the Olympics and Paralympics.
Number 5.
Okay, here we go. I'm putting gymnast Jesse Moore in at number 5. Now, this kid is only 21. He has an incredible future. He's comfortably Australia's number 1 gymnast, and he wants to go to not 1 more, but 2 more Olympic Games. He has determined that Brisbane 2032 is going to be where he absolutely reaches his pinnacle. So, young South Australian kid, amazing story. I'll just tell you a little bit about him. He's got 2 older brothers and a dad, and they're all a real footy family. So Dad was CEO of Glenelg Football Club for a while. His older brother, Ethan, has played junior football at West Adelaide, and then went on to play some league football with Port Adelaide in the SANFL, playing for the Magpies, the Magpies State League team, Port Adelaide State League team. So you would have thought that Jesse, growing up like his older brothers, was going to transition into football as well. But apparently at the age of 3, he could sit in the family home or stand in the family home and drop down and do the splits straight away. And it was pretty clear to Steve, his dad, and Trenna, his mum, that this kid had some pretty talented gymnastic roots, if you like, and was going to maybe end up being the gymnast that he is 100% become. He started at Ascot Park Primary that has a gymnastics program and then transitioned into the high performance sector with Sassy. Had an incredible rise. He absolutely cleaned up in the Oceania Champs that was in Auckland. He won that by 2 points. Now you're talking about a sport where margins of 0.2 of a point is significant. He won the Oceania Championships by 2 points, and get this, he did it despite falling off the high bar twice. So you can imagine how dominant he was across all of the other apparatus. So he went to the Olympic Games. He's the first South Australian ever to make it as a male gymnast in the Olympic Games. And of course, he did so well, made the final, creditably finished 21st. It's a sport that's dominated by China and Japan. So 21st and to make the final in his first ever games is just incredible. I'm so proud of Jesse. I do know his family. They're really good friends of ours, and just so excited to see what's next for Jesse Moore. Number 5 in this week's SA's Best Olympic Paralympic.
Number 4.
Okay, we're going to move on to number 4, and I'm singling out rower Jed Altschwager, who, with his partner Nikki Ayres, took out gold in the mixed double sculls. Now, these two came together at the end of the Tokyo Paralympics when it was determined that a mixed rowing event would take part in the 2024 Paralympics. It was going to be a double sculls. So just to explain a little bit about rowing for those who are completely unfamiliar with it, if you only have one oar to pull, then you are sweeping. And if you've got 2 oars to pull, you are sculling. So Nicky Ayres and Jed Altschwager pull 2 oars each. That's what's called sculling. It's a double scull. There's only 2 of them in the boat. So they came together after the 2021, if you like, Tokyo Paralympics. And knowing that they were a real chance to be successful, Nicky Ayres, you got to hand it to her. She moved from Canberra to Adelaide to specifically train with Jed Altschwager. So here they are in 2023. They became World Para Rowing #1 crew of the year. The first time they broke the world record, it was by 20 seconds. So they were one of the favourites going into the Olympic final. Now, the Olympic final is an incredible story in its own right. They operate with what's called a stroke coach. Now, that is a little GPS unit that is there in place of a coxswain. So in a double sculls, it's no cox, and the cox for like a rowing 8 is often there telling the crew how they're stroking, how they're travelling with each other in the race, and trying to make sure that they're maintaining the absolute ultimate tempo. In a double scull, that's with a stroke coach little GPS unit. No sooner had they left the starting point in the final at the Paralympics and their stroke coach broke. Now, Jed had never, ever once rowed without a stroke coach in a race like this. So immediately you can imagine what that's like for the stroke seat where Jed is looking at this stroke coach, and all he can see is a blank screen. He fed that information to Nicky that the stroke coach was off, and she was no problem. Yep, fine. Let's just stick with it. And so they worked it out between themselves to row their own race, and they went on to row absolutely perfectly and won this event by a boat length. They're an incredible, I think every Paralympic story is pretty incredible, but no doubt Nicky Ayres and Jed Altschwager, what they've done in the last 3 years to go from para rowers, and they've both been involved in other sports before they suffered their really unfortunate injuries that has transitioned them into the Paralympics, but to do what they've done, to be Paralympic gold medalist, Jed, a South Australian, Nicky, we're going to claim her as our own as well. They're my number 4 in this week's SA's Best Olympics and Paralympics.
Number 3.
Number 3 in this week's SA's Best is the 4 South Australians who made up part of the Australian Opals basketball team who won bronze medal in Paris. Absolutely outstanding performance from the Australians. They started really slowly with a loss to Nigeria, but my word, after that, they were just absolutely exceptional, got themselves into the bronze medal game and won that pretty comfortably. So I'm talking about the 4 South Australians: Tess Madgen, Kayla George, Steph Talbot, and Izzy Borlase. Now, Tess, Kayla, and Steph, all 30 plus, and almost certainly for Tess and Kayla, this will be their last Olympic Games, and they absolutely deserved a medal. So if you can just reflect back on what the Opals have done in the previous couple of Olympic Games, they were ranked 2nd going into the 2016 Games and finished 5th. It was just a shock, disappointing result for the Australians. And then 2020, if you can remember, it was post-furore of the Liz Cambage breakdown and that relationship between the Australian team and Liz, and that was a real disappointment as well, where Australia didn't perform particularly well. It was almost to be expected, and lost to the Americans at the quarterfinal stage. So for the Australians to bounce back, to win a bronze medal, for Tess, Kayla and Steph all to be able to have a medal around their neck. But the one I might just single out here is Izzy Borlase. Now, her parents are stars of South Australian sport. Jenny Borlase, an Australian and Garville champion netballer. And of course, Daryl Borlase, a wonderful footballer for Port Adelaide. Her brother, James, is currently on the Crows list. And for Izzy to go out there in her first Olympic Games, still a teenager, I think, and perform so well. I watched a lot of the Opals, and it was quite incredible the way she had a real influence on games. She really sparked them when she came on court. She's a bronze medalist. I suspect that for the other 3, that will be a finale in the game. Steph's only 30, so she's still a chance of going to the 2028 Games in LA in 2024, but I think we're going to see a lot out of Izzy Borlase. She's just an exciting talent. Congratulations to all of them. Number 3 in this week's SA's Best Olympics and Paralympics.
Number 2.
Okay, we're going to move on to position number 2 now. I want to share about the story about Michael Roger, a South Australian Paralympic runner who went to his 5th Games just a couple of weeks ago. I'm going to take you all the way back to his first Olympic Games in Beijing. He was entered in 3 events, the 800, the 1500 and the 5000 in the T46 category. His best performance was in 7th place over 1,500 metres, but he improved. And by the time we got to London 2012 Paralympic Games, Michael was one of the top medal hopes in the Australian para-athletics team. But of course, tragedy really did strike him at the London Games. He suffered a gastrointestinal bleeding just a night before the race, and he was selected to be in the 800 metres. He still ran, but only made one lap around the track. He was clearly in absolute agony, and he was determined to make his family and friends proud who turned out there at London. But devastatingly for him, he couldn't even finish the race. Moved on to 2016 and did incredibly well in Rio and won a bronze medal in the 1500 metres. He was selected for his fourth games at Tokyo in 2020. He came in as the world record holder. He was entered in the 1500 metres, the 5000 metres and the marathon. He was a massive chance for a Paralympic gold medal, but you wouldn't believe it. His preparations were absolutely blown apart once again. He suffered a stress fracture in his leg about 6 weeks before competition. He still ran. He finished the marathon in a respectable 2:34. So you think about that, 2.5 hours after 6 weeks after suffering a stress fracture. He finished in 6th position, but he was still just that little bit, unfulfilled at Paralympic level. He went to his 5th Paralympic Games in London. He raced in the 1500 metres. He got a massive lead with about a lap to go. He was 10 metres ahead of the rest of the field, and he tried so hard to hang on. He just wobbled a little bit in the final 80 metres. He did run in second place, so he won a silver medal at his 5th Paralympic Games. He's determined to go to a 6th. He's an incredible story, Michael Roger. Comes from Langhorne Creek in the beautiful wine region. He actually describes himself as getting better like a fine Langhorne Creek red wine. He's played footy for Langhorne Creek Footy Club. He's just such a hard-working, good, honest South Australian who we can be so proud of. Silver in his 5th Paralympic Games is quite incredible. Who knows? Let's see what he can do in his 6th. Michael Roger, a true star of South Australian sport, number 2 in this week's SA's Best.
Number 1.
Okay, number 1 in this week's SA's Best is the theme is about Olympics and Paralympics. I'm going to put track cyclist Matt Glaetzer in at the top. He was in his 4th Olympic Games. He won a bronze in the team sprint, and he finished it off on the final day with a bronze medal in the keirin. Both are remarkable stories. Let's start with the team sprint. Now, the team sprint, 3 riders start and only 1 finishes. They only ride 750 metres, and at the end of each 250-metre lap, 1 drops off. So for 3 years, Matthew Glaetzer has been riding with Matthew Richardson and Lee Hoffman, and they've had a bit of a plan that Glaetzer would start at the back and ride all 750 metres. So Richardson would drop off first and then Hoffman off second, and it would be left with Glaetzer to ride all the way around. They had a really disappointing qualifying ride in Paris, put them in a bit of a difficult heat, and Glaetzer was the one who actually said, well, I'm the problem here. I'm not keeping up with you two guys close enough so that I've got that really good slingshot to get off of your slipstream for the final lap. And so they changed it up. Having done 3 years of preparation for this event, they completely changed the order that they were going to ride in. They did this for the heat. They moved Glaetzer to the start. Then it was Matthew Richardson. Then it would be Lee Hoffman. Now, they missed the gold medal race, which was unfortunate, but it got them into the bronze medal race, and they had a chance to win a bronze medal. Now, that was significant. They'd be racing against the home team, the French. Australia had come 4th in this event in 5 straight Olympic Games, and Glaetzer had been there for the last 3 of them. The last 2 of them, where they'd lost the bronze medal, having been in that race, were against France. So you can imagine this team saying, my goodness, here we go, not again. Deja vu, we're racing against the French, they're at home, we've got all sorts of problems having to take these guys on. They swapped Richardson and Hoffman, so those two changed their positions in 2nd and 3rd place. Glaetzer started out again. All 3 were completely out of position for how they'd been preparing for this the whole time. And they won, would you believe, by 0.3 of a second. In fact, they went faster than Great Britain, who were in the gold medal race against the Netherlands. If they'd got into that race, they would have been the silver medalists. So it was an incredible story. Such on-the-fly bravery to make the decision to move Glaetzer up to the front. And Glaetzer, having been to 4 Olympic Games and missed medals every time, finally had a bronze medal. The last day, they're in the keirin. He makes the final. And you could, so the keirin, I'll just give you a quick explanation. It's 6 guys, 6 laps. The first 3 are in front of a pace bike that starts at 30 k's an hour and moves up to 50 k's an hour. And then the last 3 laps, it's anything goes. 6 riders, see if you can be in the front 3. Matt Glaetzer, he was in the race with Matthew Richardson. Richardson rode beautifully and he ended up with a silver medal. Glaetzer, with half a lap to go, he was coming last. And it looked for everything like he'd put the cue in the rack and just decided that, well, I've got my bronze medal. I can't do anything more here. That was done. Outside of him, coming around the final home turn, there were 3 riders who all collided with each other, all fell. Glaetzer rode underneath them and finished in 3rd place, a 2nd bronze medal. He described himself so beautifully as having done a Stephen Bradbury, and that's pretty much exactly what it was. But I got to say, for everything that Matthew Glaetzer has been through, everything he has done for South Australian and Australian sport, to end up with a 2nd bronze medal, it's so richly deserved, and I'm just so pleased for him. He arrived as a bit of a heartbreak story at the Paris Games, and he retires with absolutely what he deserves. 2 bronze medals, and he's going to be number 1 in my essays best for the Olympics and Paralympics for 2024.
What's hooked Hooky in?
Very quickly, I do want to share with you what's hooked me in for this week, and I'm really excited about South Australian cricket. I mean, it has been routinely pilloried, in particular because of the underwhelming performances of the South Australian Sheffield Shield team. But this is an organisation as a whole that is really standing up at the moment. They've got new look, new ideas and new pride around the organisation. Let me just share with you a couple of things that are going on. There's been a switch to really grow the membership. I think you'll find that there's 30,000 members by the beginning of this summer. But at the same time, they're trying to make the organisation feel more welcoming. They hand out new red playing caps for those who've been members for 60 years. They've got these amazing new formal jackets. If you think about what it's like at Lorgs when you see the egg yolk and ketchup jackets, those red and yellow jackets that they wear at Lords, well, there's these beautiful navy with pinstripe jackets that SACA are bringing out for their members this year. They've dropped the Redbacks and Scorpions nicknames. We're going back to the South Australian men's and women's cricket teams. They've got a beautiful formal new logo, and the playing strip, I think, is amazing. It's right back to the old state colours of red, yellow and blue. And I really believe that with what they've set up for themselves, that South Australian cricket is going to do us proud this summer. I love the way that the board stood up to Cricket Australia and made absolutely sure that we were going to get prime placement of the Adelaide Test after the disappointment of hosting the West Indies 2 years in a row. In particular, the January Test this year was just such a disappointment, and we did feel like that we got short shrift, and SACA's fought a great battle on behalf of the South Australian members of cricket, but also the South Australian public at whole. So the test match is going to be amazing. Our women are already unbelievable. They've won the last 2 WBBL titles, and I really think the men are ready to turn a corner with a number of new faces this year. So I'm really hooked in with South Australian cricket for season 24-25.
By hook or by crook?
Okay, let's get something off my chest, and it relates to the City Bay. That was just an incredible event last weekend. I absolutely loved it. It was on the front pages of the paper. It was a feature story on the TV news. We saw Izzy Bat Doyle run a new record for the women's. We saw Isaac Hayne do incredibly well to win just by a couple of strides for the men's race at the end there. It's a complete and utter wonderful community event. And it doesn't matter whether you're Izzy or Isaac and you're celebrating as you cross the finish line in somewhere around half an hour for those 12Ks, or whether you do it in an hour and a half, you can pump your fist as you go over that finish line. The wonderful thing I love about it as well is that there's just so much infrastructure involved in this race. And I want to compare it to the Adelaide Marathon. Ironically enough, on both of the Sundays, the Adelaide Marathon was in mid-August, and of course, we just had last weekend the City Bay Fun Run. I had to go to work both days, so I'm on the road at about 6:30, and it was almost impossible to get in and around the western side of the city for the road block-offs to cater for the City Bay. Love it. Think it's magnificent. Didn't mind me going around the eastern side of town to get to work. But I contrast that with the Adelaide Marathon, which is a really good event run by the South Australian Road Runners Club. But my word, it gets nothing like the infrastructure and build out that it really should. I was driving along the top of Port Road, so the section between the old Coca-Cola and the old West End. There's 6 lanes of traffic at 6:30 on a Sunday morning available. One of them is blocked off so that the marathon runners can run. And I just feel like that's really not good enough. It's a half marathon track that the marathon runners have to run twice. And I'm absolutely of the belief that with the town we have and how we could show it off, that we could 100% make the Adelaide Marathon something really, really special. We could shut down some more roads. We could have it running along North Terrace. Imagine running past Parliament House and running past Government House and the museum and all of those beautiful buildings that are along North Terrace through the parklands. It'd be some amazing routes that you could generate. All it needs is a little bit of enterprise and a little bit of determination to build out a bit more infrastructure and a bit more protection for our runners. We've got so many great runners who could be ambassadors for this event. Jess Stenson, the Olympic marathon runner. Imagine her running the Adelaide Marathon. Izzy Bat-Doyle, exactly the same. She's going to be a marathon runner of the future. Caitlin Adams looks for everything like she's going to be a star marathon runner of the future. The Cox boys. There is so many great runners in South Australia who promote this, and we can turn the Adelaide Marathon into an event that rivals the Tour Down Under or the Adelaide 500, where there's other major infrastructure build-outs that we protect the athletes and the competition from. Only has to happen on a Sunday. It's very easy to do. This could be an amazing event. The Adelaide Marathon run by the South Australian Road Runners Club. We just need to put some effort into it to make that, what's already a good event, into a really brilliant event. We can do it by hook or by crook. Finally, my benediction today, and I want to refer back to the situation post the semi-final between Port Adelaide and Hawthorn that led Ken Hinkley to be fined $20,000 by the AFL for conduct unbecoming. All he really did was just have a bit of a crack at a young bloke who's a bit of a pillock on social media. So I just want to make this point. The AFL has fined Ken $20,000 for something they're uncomfortable with. If they put Port and Hawthorn together for a feature match next year, then you can write the AFL down as the most hypocritical organisation in world sport. Now, the two clubs are already being mooted to meet again in gather round or opening round following that semi-final blockbuster. The AFL fined Ken Hinkley $20,000 for a regrettable but a hardly serious incident. He threw a few barbs at Jack Ginnivan. We can all deal with it. He apologised, he said sorry, and he moved on. But if the AFL leans into it, promotes it, having fined the bloke for it, that would be just completely unfortunate and completely unreasonable. We're going to watch that with interest. But if I see the AFL start to lean into a promotion of a battle between Port and Hawthorn on the strength of the Hinkley-Ginnivan battle at the end of last week's semi-final, that would just be completely shameless from the AFL. That's it for this week. Hope you've enjoyed what's been a bit of a bonanza of content for this week. Our Olympic Paralympic episode is in the can. If you haven't listened to it already, listen to my chat with David Wilde, the voice of the South Australian National Football League Grand Final. He's about to do his 36th straight Grand Final on Sunday. He gives me his SA's best of SA football Grand Finals. It's a great chat with him. Please go back and find that. Listen to it. Thanks for your company today. We'll see you next week. We've got another bonus episode for you as well. See you then.